have an inconsistent relationship with social media. Well, Instagram to be specific. WhatsApp isn't as addictive, perhaps, given my modest, non existent social circle. But with Instagram, every time I log on, my scroll time seems to increase. Even as I'm scrolling, my mind is occupied with thoughts along the lines of just close the app. Is it that difficult? You see that small circle in the bottom middle of the phone? Just close the app. The question arises, are we spending more time looking at our phones instead of looking up at the surroundings? Have we bid goodbye to our lives offline? Maybe this one's a reach, but are we cyborgs already? Namaste, namaskaram, wherever you are. This is your host Pavana, and you are listening to Culture Speak. Back in 2020, when the chaos around COVID had took a hike to fearful heights, I had written an article on my phone addiction. Yes, of course, I hear the privilege. As the COVID drama unveiled, I was on my phone so much that I had to write about it. Well, I was lucky and fortunate enough to not have landed the horrid COVID virus. I remember thinking at the time, 4 years back, wow, 4 years, that I would never let this happen again, that I was never going to be this addicted to my phone again. The unfortunate eureka moment that led me to writing about my nightmare of phone addiction was that I was looking through my phone and I realized there were more screenshots than actual pictures. I had preserved more of the internet's memories than my own. While there are fewer screenshots today in my phone, it's because I'm more hooked to Instagram reels and there's not a lot of scope for screenshots there. Think about this. I'd written an article on Instagram addiction before Instagram introduced its now hyper popular reels. So they did this in August 2020, and ever since, the app and how as users we relate to it considerably changed. Take a look at these stats. It's a bit dry, but bear with me for a few seconds. Instagram algorithm favors Reels over any other content formats. And then another report, from the Wall Street Journal, uncovered that new internal documents show that Instagram users are spending 17.6 million hours a day watching Reels. Well, it's still 1/10 of what TikTok users do, but it's still, quite a lot. And then we have another study from Social Insider discovering that there was a 57.4% year over year increase in usage of Instagram Reels. Now, see, let's be honest here. We don't need these states to tell us that Reels are highly addictive and that it is difficult to get out of that space. To everyone in my home and to my best friends, the phone was an extension of their bodies. It was hard to see myself and my family without a phone in our hands. The silence in our house was punctuated by the noise from these phones. Even as I was scrolling on Instagram and feeding myself stupid Reels videos, I hated it. My brain tingled, my fingers jittered, and I just somehow wanted to get out of that app. But as soon as I closed the app, my arms involuntarily reached out for the phone again. See, none of this is an exaggeration, as embarrassing as it is to admit it. So, what in the world is going on? Well, enter dopamine. Dr. Andrew Huberman, professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford, really puts it in perspective for us. I'm going to paraphrase his explanation that he gave on a podcast interview. So, when we use Instagram or any kind of social media for that matter after a long time, a substantial amount of dopamine is released. Initially, it's exciting, it's novel, it almost feels adventurous. This is what dopamine does, as opposed to serotonin, which makes us feel satisfied, comfortable, sated, content. But dopamine is about pursuit. It's about that go attitude. What now? What next? Take someone who's high on cocaine. They have this restless attitude. And that is because drugs like cocaine bind to the dopamine transporters of the brain, thus producing an accumulation or buildup of this chemical. Now, what happens when the novelty wears off and yet you're scrolling. You don't know why you're doing it, and at this point, this is an obsessive compulsive behavior. The obsession being the thought, and the compulsion being the behavior, the scrolling. But Huberman says this is very different from OCD behavior such as cleaning, where there is an anxiety relief towards the end. But in the case of scrolling, the dopamine dips, and you're still scrolling. The scrolling only serves to further increase the obsession. So, why are you doing this even when the dopamine is gone and you're still here on the app? That is because the algorithm is very, very clever. It basically makes you wait around for better things to come by rewarding you randomly. So you're scrolling, you're bored, you're about to close the app, and you suddenly see something that hooks you again, and the cycle resumes. In the midst of our rapidly advancing tech space and the integration of AI into our daily lives, it's only getting more difficult to see a return to a pre digital era. For those of us born in the 90s or earlier, we can recall a time when days were spent without smartphones. Days immersed in a life of delightful boredom in our gardens and in our bare backyards that teemed with potential for play. We used to make up our own games. You see, creativity is born out of boredom. But we are no longer bored, we are no longer brilliant. Entertainment is all around us. People tell you that you don't need to get rid of social media just to find a balance. But you see, the thing is, finding a balance is difficult because this is an algorithm that sets you up for failure. Now, with a framework that sets you up for failure and chains you to an app for much longer than you would expect, it's not difficult to believe that we have perhaps began our transformation to cyborg. What or who is a cyborg? According to Donna Haraway, a cyborg is a hybrid of machine and organism, a creature of social reality as well as that of fiction. Haraway's cyborg does not dream of community. It does not recognize the Garden of Eden. It's not made of mud and it cannot return to dust. Does this not sound eerily similar to a lot of us today or the people to come? People now are quickly forgetting what life on Earth, or as I'd like to put it, what life with Earth used to be like. But at least it's a memory for us. Sad thing is, it's nothing but fiction for a lot of children. Here's where it gets interesting. We find ourselves in this peculiar situation. A hypothesis nonetheless, but a peculiar situation. Our world is populated with humans evolving into cyborgs, trying to adapt to a tech driven existence. Meanwhile, the generations to come are born into the cyborg reality, into the thick of it, without a reference point of a life disconnected from the digital realm. So, as we make our way through this ever changing landscape of human tech integration, we must start thinking what it means to be human at all. Anywho, before I drag you down into a pit of existential dread, I'll quit while I'm ahead. I genuinely hope we spend less time on social media or at least spend a life trying to. Because we only get this one chance, and it's important that we look up, we see the birds, we see the sky, the different shades it takes. It's important. I know apart from the dopamine dysregulation that we talked about in this episode, there are a lot of other consequences for social media and other persuasive tech, from the content manufacturing a particular way of thinking to increased risk of anxiety and depression. Basically, the host of problems that the documentary The Social Dilemma covered, and much more. If you wish to know more about this topic, I have a few recommendations for you. First, check out Tristan Harris. Along with Azar Askin, he runs the non-profit organization Center for Humane Technology. Their mission is to expose the negative effects of persuasive tech and empower people to take action. Tristan has given numerous talks and interviews on topics related to the ethics of technology, the attention economy, and the need for responsible and humane practices within the tech industry. Second, yes, if you have not watched The Social Dilemma, go check that out. Then, if you're someone who wishes to have an Instagram profile for social, professional, or personal reasons, go follow Caleb Duplain. On Instagram. He's also there on YouTube, but more active on Instagram, I think. His aim is to provide you clarity in a world of digital distraction. His content acts like a reminder to get off social media. Check him out, you'll understand what I mean. All right, then, that wraps up this episode of Culture Speak. I'd like to leave you with a thought from one of my favorite writers, Matt Zehag. When anger trolls the internet looking for a hook, it's time to disconnect and go and read a book. I hope you're finding value in this podcast series. Thank you for listening. See you next time.